Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I am super excited to share today's guest with you. One of the great things that I love about my job is that I get introduced to really fascinating people with all kinds of incredible stories, and today's guest is definitely one of them. Joining me today is Amy Downs, and I'm going to bring Amy out to tell you her story in her own words, but just to kind of give you a little bit of background of her. She's currently the CEO of Allegiance Credit Union in Oklahoma City. And you might be familiar with them, or their name might sound familiar, their name, which was formerly Federal Employees Credit Union, because they were the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. If you're anybody like me, you remember where you were when any of these big milestones hit. But Amy was literally in the middle of this. And since the past 2+ decades, since the bombing, her life has gone through a complete transformation. She became a mother. She lost over 200 pounds, which is incredible. She completed an Ironman triathlete. I mean, she's a triathlon. It's incredible. She got an MBA, and she is now the CEO of the credit union where she worked as, if I'm not mistaken, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like an entry-level job, and she's now the CEO. So when I tell you this woman has literally lived a life in the past 2 decades, I'm not even joking. She's a national speaker, and her message has really shifted over the years from it being focused so much on the bombing as to now she talks just about her whole life evolution and transformation. She recently wrote a book, which we're going to talk about, called Hope is a Verb. So anybody that is watching this on YouTube, I'm holding it up right now. I read it. You could see I flagged it. I underlined. It is such a great book. Even if you're not like a self-help person, this is an awesome book of inspiration and transformation. Literally, I love it, love it, love it. So I said, Amy, you have to come on my show and tell your story. And today's the day, people. So you're in for a treat. So without further ado, please welcome to my show, Miss Amy Downs.
It is such an honor to be here. I feel like I'm part of your tribe. I'm all about organization and declutter, and I'm so tickled to be here today.
Well, I am so excited to have you here. And our listeners, obviously, I just gave a real kind of top line overview, hitting some of the bigger, pieces to your story. But obviously, it goes much deeper than my, minute soundbite. So in your own words, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about you and kind of just walk us through your story?
So, I started out in life not being very organized, not being very intentional. I would describe who I was as someone that just allowed life to happen to me. Like I didn't live with intention. I didn't live with purpose. I was just floating through life complacently. After high school, I went to college because that's what you're supposed to do. And I flunked out. And I flunked out because I could not pass the remedial math class. Like not the legitimate one that you get credit hours for, but like the one you have to take before you take the real math class. Flunked it twice and dropped out. So I really just did not know what I wanted to be or do. And my confidence was completely shaken. I gained 200 pounds. Like I was a hot mess. And I got a job because of my amazing math skills as a teller with a cash drawer at this credit union in Oklahoma City in the federal building. And I had been working for the credit union for about 7 years when the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing happened. And that was my wake-up call. That was when my life began to change. Obviously it changed, because of the trauma and, all the horrible, the grief and the aftermath. But then it also changed because when I was buried alive, I had an opportunity for life to flash before my eyes and to realize what was really important. And so that really changed my future.
And in the book, you talk about it. I mean, I'm like sitting here reading it and feeling like I'm watching this through a window. Like it was unbelievable. And I can't even imagine what that was like. And you talk about it in the book, and I don't want to give too much away because I want everyone to go read it, but you talk about not just your own story of what you went through, but losing your closest friends and coworkers in an instant, talking about what your girlfriend was wearing and just what that was like, the trauma on so many levels. And, you know, again, we're living in a crazy time right now, right? And there's so much unexpected upheaval, and people are dealing with loss and trauma, and just more than, I think, on a global scale than we ever have collectively. And, you know, you walked through this, a lot of this, almost carrying the shoulder of a survivor alone, like having to navigate that. I mean, you had a support system, but you survived, and your coworkers didn't, and your friends didn't. And it's not just rebuilding yourself physically from that, but emotionally and, you know, from a job perspective. Can you just kind of just unpack that a little?
Yeah. So, you know, just to kind of help, I'm sure you've got some younger audiences that maybe weren't even born yet.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was kind of like, seriously, maybe like I was 2 when that happened.
Right. So just to kind of walk you through, you know, so here I am, I'm 355 pounds. I'm at a place in my life where I'm just sort of floating through, you know, and it's a normal spring morning. And I'm sitting at my desk just a few feet from the front of the Murrah building on the 3rd floor. One of my coworkers walks in, sits down next to me. I turn to ask her what she needs. And I don't even know if the words come out, because that's when this bomb goes off. And so for me, everything goes black. I hear this roaring so loud in my head, and I feel this powerful rushing sensation like I'm falling. And I'm actually falling.
Say you were.
Yeah. I was falling 3 floors. And I found out later that I was buried under 10 feet of rubble. I was still in my chair. I was upside down. I was completely buried alive. So I could not see anything. If I opened my eyes, closed my eyes, it didn't matter. It was blackness. And the screaming stopped after, you know, just a minute. And I did not know if I was dead or alive. I had no feeling. I had no bearing about where I was. I had no idea what had happened. And I was screaming, help me, help me. And there was no answer. It was about 45 minutes before I heard men's voices. They were looking for the daycare babies, because there was a daycare on the 2nd floor. And I started screaming. And so one of the men, I remember I heard him, he was like, I hear you, child. How old are you? And I remember thinking, I'm 2. You know, I was afraid if I told him I was 28, he wouldn't come get me. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm 28. And he goes, that's okay. And he starts yelling, we have a live one. We have a live one. I need backup. I need help. And he says, you have to keep talking to me. We can't see you. We have to follow the sound of your voice. And so we talk until they come across my hand, which I was still in my chair, upside down under 10 feet of rubble, but my right hand was sticking out of the side of this rubble pile. So they find my hand, and I feel the pressure of hand, and I'm thinking, great, you know, this is a 1, 2, 3, pull me up and out situation. About the time they find my hand, I hear men's voices in the background yelling, there's been another bomb. There's another bomb. Let's go. Everybody, there's another bomb. And my rescuers were just talking over this, saying, Amy, we need to get some more equipment. We're going to be right back. We just need some more equipment. But I could hear, and I knew what was happening. So I just started telling them my name and tell my family I loved them because I knew that this was it. And they left, and I was now alone and knew that I was buried under this rubble. And my reality was there's another bomb that's going to go off and I'm going to die. So during this time period, I had what a lot of people describe as life flashing before your eyes, where all of a sudden, like, I realized what was important in life was relationships and not stuff, not what I thought was important. And I remember just thinking, I'm 28, I'm getting ready to die, and I've never even lived. Like, I've never even lived. And all I could do was lay there and pray. And, it was about 45 minutes that I had of this time period of just being alone and scared and waiting to die. And it was during that time when I just kept begging God for a second chance. If I could just make it out, I would live my life different. I would be different. I would do different. And, I think we call that bargaining. I don't know if that's purring. I think that's bargaining.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of that. And of course, there was not a second bomb. That's why I'm here today. And they came and it took them 6.5 hours total to get me out, and to get me out in one piece, which I'm so thankful for, because they kept having to consult an emergency physician on standby about amputating my leg to get everybody out safely, because the building was very unstable, or what was left of the building was very unstable where I was located. But they counted to 3. I remember they said, "This is going to hurt." And of course, I didn't care. I was like, "Just get me out." And they pulled me out. And I remember looking around and thinking, this is not real. I'm in a movie. This is not happening. It did not look like it. I couldn't wrap my brain around this is reality. They put me on the back of a gurney. They took me out of the back of the federal building. And I remember looking up at the sky and taking that first breath of fresh air and promising God, I will never live my life the same. And I didn't know what that meant. I really didn't. And I didn't know what my injuries were. I just knew that if I made it through, that I was going to do different this time. And, I'd like to tell you that, I went to the hospital, and then later they released me and they played the Rocky music theme and I went running down the steps and started changing my life. It didn't quite work that way. Right. And how many of us, we go through that, right? We know we want to change. We know we want to do something different, but it comes in very tiny, tiny, small steps. But then later we look back, and if we take those small steps consistently over time, all of a sudden we look back and we're like, wow, like, look at the transformation. It sneaks up on you. It's kind of like decluttering the hall closets, right? You start with like a little bit here, a little bit there, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, like, look what I did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I have so many questions, and I keep thinking, you're obviously Oklahoma City. I live up in the Northeast. I remember vividly the day that happened. I remember where I was working in Manhattan, but I was like, my husband was in New York during 9/11. I was at home with an 11-month-old. So you think about like these big monumental, pivotal, like, events in history that shape us in our lifetime. And just, I remember like just and I wasn't there in it. I wasn't in it, thankfully. My husband wasn't in the towers, but he was in the city. And we have friends who were all, nearby and worried about them. And when something like that hits so close to home, it gives you this level of pause that I think you get frozen. It just really flashes our mortality and how in the blink of an eye, life can change. And again, so many of us have just seen that on incremental personal scales with COVID, and just life in general. And I think in those moments, I don't want to say it's easy. So please take that with a grain of salt, but like, it's easy to say, I'm going to change. I'm going to do life different, right? Please, like you said, with the bargaining, please, if I get a second chance, if we come out of this on the other side, I'm going to live life different. And I believe in that moment, everybody means that. I don't think
Well, we have clarity. I think we have clarity in that moment, and we know what we want, or we know we want to do different. We just don't know quite how to get there yet.
Exactly. And what I love so much about your story is that you kept at it. You chipped away, even though it wasn't easy, even though the direction necessarily wasn't clear. And I think there's so many people that have the will to change, but they don't take action on it for whatever reason. They don't have the strategy, they don't have the support system, whatever the reason. But at the end of the day, wanting to do something and actually taking action, doing it, are two different things. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of speak to what you did. Like, so you knew you were going to live life different. Walk us through what that transformation started.
So the transformation started, there's a lot of facets to our lives, right? There's, physical, and there's our mind, and there's our job, and there's spiritual, and there's all these facets. And for me, some changes started with spiritual. I realized how, important faith was to me, and then the relationships with my family and my friends. And so it started very, very slow. But there was something I kept coming back to, which was that I wanted to live my life different. And it just wouldn't leave me alone. It was haunting me. Those moments haunted me. And I didn't quite know how to make the change, right? And I remember one day at work, I was at work, and we had gone through amazing change at work. Like, we lost our only location, over half of our employees, and our entire business model was destroyed overnight because we were a financial institution that served the people in a building, and that building was gone, and our staff, and I mean, it was terrible, but we made it through. And I was sitting at work thinking about this, thinking, why am I a rock star at work? I don't know if I was a rock star, but why can, but you know what I mean? Yeah. You're like, why can I be amazing on my job, but then my personal life is a wreck or a mess or whatever, and, at work, we break it down, right? We have a goal and we set action steps. We do that all the time on our job. And I took out an index card out of my desk drawer, and I wrote on one side of it, I want to get my degree. And on the back of the index card, I just suddenly started writing down like every single, like the smallest step I would have to do to get that. And my first step was find the phone number to LSU. And that was because I needed to get my transcript, which my transcript was a 0.50 grade point average.
Oh, geez.
which then meant one of my action steps was find an accredited college that will take you. So they were the smallest steps. And I just started taking the smallest step that I felt like I could actually take. And then one day I graduated with my degree, and I graduated top of the class, and was voted outstanding student, and my confidence just soared. I was so proud of myself. And then I was like, maybe I'm not going to stop with my degree. Maybe I'm going to get my MBA. And then when I started through my MBA program, and I was, learning and excited and thinking I'm doing it, then I was like, you know what? I want to tackle the big demon in my life, the big thing, right? And I think, I don't know, everybody I've met, I think, has a big thing. And my big thing was eating. And I weighed 355 pounds. And I had joined Weight Watchers so many times that I joined under aliases, because it was just like starting to get embarrassing, because every time I would go, I actually would end up gaining weight. I'm the only person that could join Weight Watchers and gain weight. And so I thought, you know what? I've learned all these research skills through my college program. I'm going to just start researching. Keep an open mind and research every single program, every single option, because the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again the same way. And so I started looking at different things and trying different things. And I was determined that I was going to find something that would work no matter what. And for me personally, my own situation, what I felt was right for me eventually was I had a bariatric surgery called a gastric sleeve. And that gave me the jump start to change my life. Now, I'd like to tell you it's a magical pill and that's the only thing you have to do, but dang it, it's not. You still got to work at it. And it's still a process. I mean, I still work at it. And so I wanted to be fit. I wanted to be able to ride my bike. I wanted to be able to fit with my son on a ride at
Probably just walk up the stairs without getting out of breath. I mean, I'm thinking even just like basic life things, around that extra weight.
Listen, I can tell you, I remember getting to a restaurant because I would have to meet people for lunch for business. And I would get to the restaurant at least 15 minutes early so that I could ask the hostess to seat me at a table because I lived in fear of being seated at a booth where I would not fit. And I wouldn't fit. Like it would be this awkward thing where they would have to move us. And on top of that, you don't realize how slick restaurant floors are until you're really, really heavy. And I would also live in fear that I was somehow going to slip on the wet floor and be like a beached whale on the floor of the restaurant. Like there's so many things that, we take for granted that, yeah, it was difficult. And so I decided, I wanted to be fit, not just lose weight, but I really wanted to change my life. And so I remember getting a bicycle and just wanting to ride 15 minutes in my neighborhood was my goal. And the thing is, I think if the idea is to keep leveling up, right? So I think we do that naturally. Like you have something you want to do and you accomplish it instead of, okay, I'm done, and settle back into routine. I think you have to keep sort of, challenging yourself to raise that bar. And so I wanted to ride a little further and a little longer and until eventually, the next year after I started riding my bike, my sister and I rode our bikes across the state of Oklahoma from the Texas border to the Kansas border. Oh, and then I did that for the next 10 years. I've ridden my bike across the state of Oklahoma and it just kept leading, to more and more and more, but you have to stay intentional. Like you can't, you really do have to make it a way of life to be intentional. And I hate to keep bringing up clutter, but that's my thing.
No, well,
it's like clutter.
This is what and there's so many parallels, but I don't want to
it really is. No, because if you just go, oh, I cleaned out the closet, I'm one and done, check that off. What happens next summer when you're in your closet? The thing is junked up again. You have to make it intentional that if I buy a new outfit, I'm going to take one out or whatever your method is. You have to sort of revisit that and, oh, this is getting cluttered. I need to relook at it again. And so I do that with my life. Every morning, I literally sit and think, where am I? And what are my goals? And what am I doing today to move toward those? I have to be very intentional about it.
I love it. And there's a couple things that I just want to kind of reiterate and piggyback on, and then we're going to take a quick break, but I really want to just highlight these things. The first thing is you had small wins along the way. You didn't set off to ride cross country or cross state rather. Your goal was to ride 15 minutes. Whether that's a block or 5 blocks, whatever. Your goal was to this small little thing, and you achieved it. And you stayed there until you felt that you had mastered that. And then you added another layer to that. And it was this building block getting you to this point so that you felt the confidence and you had the physical and emotional bandwidth to be able to, when you did that, make that initial ride, you were prepared as we could be because you had laid all these foundational bricks along the way. And I see this in life with people, specifically when it comes to clutter. And again, it comes to when I work with people, it's they talk about clutter in their exercise. It talks about clutter in their marriage. It talks about all these other things. But if you look at the clutter or the disorganization, it's, again, starting small. And that's why I always tell people, pick your like low hanging fruit. I don't care if it's a medicine cabinet, those small little things is what gives you that momentum to want to keep going. And the other thing that you said that I want to really piggyback on was that feeling of shame and guilt, or not guilt, but that shame and fear that was hanging over your head, like specifically with the restaurant analogy. And I think about people who either don't invite people, again, we're not talking COVID times, don't invite people over their homes because they're embarrassed, or they don't feel, or it's too much work, or they just feel judged, or they're judging themselves. And that weight is just so unhealthy for so many reasons. And, anybody that has ever been on a deathbed or faced in a life and death situation, we've heard it a million times. It really comes down to relationships. And are we sacrificing relationships because of the power that our stuff or our weight or whatever else is holding on to us? And that's really, and again, I'm not trying to say this to like sound like I'm preaching from a pulpit. That's not what I mean, but I just want people to just realize like your stuff isn't what's important, and what people think of you isn't important. It's what you think of yourself and how you are forging those relationships. And if your stuff or your weight is that roadblock, then that hopefully is the motivation for you to want to make change.
Absolutely. I remember when I was laying there thinking I was going to die, regretting that I had let my weight keep me from going back home and seeing my family. And I had let some relationships slip away because I was embarrassed about the way I looked. And you know what? When your life is over, it's the relationships that are important. And I regretted that I had allowed that to interrupt my life.
Yeah. We're going to take one quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I want to dive into the book. I really want to unpack the book. So sit tight. Okay, Amy, I love, I read it in like 2 days. I told all my friends about it. That's why I was like, I got to get her on the show. Talk about the book. Talk about what the messaging is, why you decided to write it, all the things, what your goal is with it.
Oh, I thought we were still on break.
No. Oh, no. That's okay. No. We're back.
First edit.
That's okay. Sorry. We're back. So tell me what your goal is. Tell us about the book.
I knew I wanted to write a book. I felt like there was a message. And every time I would speak to people, they would ask me, do you have a book? And I didn't. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I should, but I didn't want the book to be about me. Like, I didn't want the book to be, oh, look at me. Like, I did this and I did that. And, the idea was, okay, what is the message that's going to help other people? And so I read this book called Hope Rising, the Science of Hope. And in it, it talked about hope being the idea that your future can be better and brighter than your past, and that you actually have a role in playing to make that happen. And I thought, that's it. That's exactly it. That's what hope is. And I think that's what people need to know, because we say hope and we really mean it like a wish, like, oh, I hope whatever, like there's no power in it. Well, hope actually means you have power. It means you're setting the goal. It means you're deciding the steps that you have agency over. No matter how small they are, you have agency over taking those steps to reach that idea of that better future. And I remember I met this young guy and on a bike ride, and he was telling me how like he really wanted to be an Ironman, but he wasn't fast enough. He wasn't sure. Like he just, he really wanted to be an Ironman. He had no idea that I was an Ironman. So he's telling me a story about how he wants to be an Ironman. And I said, look, and this was like the year before I become an Ironman. And I said, last year I completed an Ironman in Arizona. And I just saw the look on his face. Like it was like this old lady that's a little heavy that I'm talking to, like it's Iron Man. Like I could see the look on his face. And I'm like, yeah. So what's your excuse? And he was just like, really? And all of a sudden you could just see this like fire lit in him. Like if she can do it, well then hell, I can do it.
You're fine.
Sorry.
It's all good. It's okay.
But it was like, you could just see the look on his face. Like I could do it. And I thought that's what I want this book to be. I want people to know like how late in life I got my act together and how messed up I was. And if I could take these steps and if I could change my life, like they can totally do it. They can totally do it. And so I wanted it to be an encouragement and sort of like just an inspiration to help people go, you know what? Like, yeah, I do have control over the direction of my life.
Well done, because you did. And I love how it flips from you're going from present day. We do some flashbacks going back and forth. I mean, it's such a great, relatable story that I love it. And I guess, there's probably people that are out there that are going, I'm in a rut, but I haven't had that big life transformation moment, right? Like obviously, like you were given this wake up call, I don't know if you were given it, but like you experienced this life altering, like in the history books, wake up call. So it was like thunder and lightning. Here's your chance, conviction. A lot of people don't have that big aha moment. It's your life is a series of mundane or mediocre, or we're going through the motions. And sometimes in some ways, and tell me what you think, in some ways it's worse because it's just every day is a little like Groundhog's Day. And you're like, you just start to kind of, well, it could be worse, or, it's okay. And we just start like kind of lowering the bar for ourselves with everything. I've seen it with myself, even when it comes to motivation. And I'm like a go person. I'm super extroverted. I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm a doer, like all the things. And I can tell you that I've seen, my own energy level through being isolated from people and like my normal lifestyle drop, and having to really be intentional about saying, come on, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. But not everybody, that doesn't come easy to a lot of people. What's your advice? I'm sure you come in contact. Like what do you say to somebody if that's struggling?
So, I actually had this happen to me after the bombing. I had it happen to me. It was about 2011. I went through a season at work where I was usually a rock star, where I was just floating and complacent. And I was around somebody else who is, a rock star at work, and you kind of feel that pain because, like I should be that person and I'm not. And I said something like, I wish, I used to be that way, at work. I'm kind of going through a season. I used to be that way. And I remember, he said to me, he was like, well, change it. And I'm like, oh, how simple, like just change it. But I started thinking about that. I was like, I do. And you're right. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like same thing over and over again. And so what I did was I thought, I need a shot in the arm. I need to shake things. Something has to happen to shake me up and wake me up. So what I did is I went to a conference. I found out, okay, what is the most inspirational, like best, like submerge myself in something that is going to like inspire me and wake me up.
Light a little fire.
Light that fire. So I would, if you're that person who, because you don't have to have the life or death situation, but you do have to shake up your life, I think. And I think that means either starting to go to lunch with a person who is that person that you want to be more like, finding, change your surroundings a little bit, start listening to different stuff because it starts in your head, and you need to listen to like motivational, positive, like it will start rubbing off on you. So you need to start listening to that kind of stuff. And I have a little hack I do every single morning that helps me. And it's really cheesy, but it's that magic wand question where I say, if I had a magic wand, like what would I do? That might be for my day. Sometimes if I had a magic wand today, what would today look like? Or it could be for my life, or it might be for this vacation, whatever the thing is. And I start from a place of, if I could do anything, then what would that look like? And then I start backing my way into, okay, so like I remember when quarantine first happened, my husband was kind of being silly, not making fun of me, but like being silly. And he goes, I was kind of depressed. And he goes, well, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? And I kind of smarted off. I was like, well, if I had a magic wand, a hairstylist would appear in my living room and cover my gray hair and give me a cute haircut.
And I right there.
Yeah, and exactly. And so we were kind of, being silly, yes. But then I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, Amy, take your own advice here. And I went to YouTube and I learned how to color my own hair at home. I'd never done that in my life. And I ordered hair product and I colored it. And so, you know what? No, I didn't have a hairstylist appear in my living room, but I accomplished what I was wanting to accomplish. So that's how I back my way into it. Like, what is it you want? And then given your current situation and your current limitations, okay, now this is what takes you out of victim role and makes you a champion, right? Because now it's what can you do to move forward, given your current situation and your current limitations. And because that's where we want to live sometimes, is in the victim role. Well, I can't really do anything because this, because that. Like we can make up with a lot of excuses. Okay, great. Given all your excuses, what's one thing you can do today to move forward toward what you want?
I love it. I think that's awesome. I want you to tell our listeners where, if they want to learn more about you, read your book, watch your TED Talk, which is great as well, all the things, where do they go?
The easiest way to find how to stay in touch with me, I think, is probably just to go to my website, which is amydowns.org. And I've got my links to social there and information on the book, which is on Amazon, and the TED Talk is there. And that's probably the best way, amydowns.org.
And we're going to, obviously, for anybody this isn't their first rodeo, we're going to link up to everything. We'll put obviously links to your website, but we'll put direct links for the book and the TED Talk just to make it super easy for everybody. It's a great book. Your story is so encouraging. And again, my show is really designed to help people in all aspects of what an organized life looks like. And yes, sometimes that means your kitchen. Sometimes it means your closet. And a lot of times it just means your health, your job, your mental well-being. And your story really has such a through line to all of those touch points. I am so grateful that you were able to come on our show today. We're going to take one more quick break, and then I'm going to come back and put you in the hot seat with our rapid fire wrap-up questions. So sit tight. Okay, Amy. So we're asking everybody this year, I've incorporated an extra wrap-up question because I think we all look for inspiration in different places. What's a book or resource that has been, and I know that you mentioned the Hope Rising book, so that might be your answer, but I always ask people, what's a book or resource that has really inspired you throughout your life that's really had a huge impact?
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a book this year I read that has had such a huge impact on me. I've been telling everybody about it.
What is it?
And it is Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg.
Ooh, I like it.
And it is this idea of, to change your life, you just start with the very tiniest, simplest habit, and you start there. It's a great book. I've read it twice now. It's very good.
I love it. Oh, we'll definitely link up to it. And I think I'm going to have to go check that out when we're done. And then our last two questions that we ask all of our guests, because we all know that sometimes in life we are thriving and other times we feel like a bit of a hot mess. So in this particular season of life, where do you feel like a rock star And where do you need a little TLC?
Well, as you can see, my house is
Gorgeous.
like tidy and organized and decluttered, and I'm a rock star there.
That's great.
However, I literally woke up at 3 a.m. this morning and could not go back to bed, bothered by how incredibly cluttered and messy where I work is.
Now,
Oh
that is so
my gosh.
interesting,
It
because
is
usually it's the reverse.
Oh no. Like, you know how you have like some people have a junk drawer at home? We have a junk room. We call it the supply room. No, it's the junk room. People like there's like I went in there yesterday and there's like a stack of used binders. Like I guess people are scared to throw binders away, so they put them in the junk room, the supply room. Mm-hmm. And there's like 10 key calculators that don't even work piled up in there. Like it's a mess, and we need to, it needs work.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting, because usually the common thread is when people say, you know, I'm a rock star at work, I've got it all together, and then my home is a hot mess. But I think what I'm picking up is that's like a common area. Mm-hmm. So that's everyone passes what I call the clutter torch. It's like, here, I'm just passing the clutter torch, because that absolves them from having to make a decision. Yes. So they're just putting it there, and it's like, okay, hot potato, like not it. And I'm just passing it off.
And I realize, like, I'm the CEO. So like, I'm the person that needs to fix it. Like they're all, like I have been not doing my job there.
Well, as a CEO, it's your job to delegate it, maybe not get in the weeds yourself, but maybe delegate that. So
exactly. But I should be making it happen.
There you go. I love it. Well, Amy, if that's the worst of where your hot mess moments, you're doing pretty darn well. Thank you so much. If I'm ever in Oklahoma City, we're totally getting together for lunch, drinks, maybe even get me on a bike for a short ride.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. And I love your podcast. Keep doing it. I love it. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. And if you are new to our show, welcome to This Organized Life. Please click the subscribe button. We're everywhere you get podcasts. Don't ever miss an episode. Go back into our archives, pick the ones that you're interested in. We'd love to hear from you. We have a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, This Organized Life Podcast, you can always shoot us an email at info@simplybeorganized. We love to hear topic ideas, questions, you name it. It is truly my pleasure to serve you guys each and every week. I'm Lori Palau. Until next week, peace out.